What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Books with Duddy. I am Duddy, your dashing, not really, host. Back with another book to talk about. We'll do a spoiler-free kind of review. But the book we are going to talk about today is called All the Lies by Nicola Sanders. If you're looking for a discussion of the book that includes spoilers, including talking about the ending and going more in depth about the characters and the story and all that, check out the linked video. So this is a book about Amy, who is in an abusive relationship with her husband, Jason. Jason is very controlling, hits her, you name it, all of those things. And really, she's the only one that sees that. So she is looking for a way out. Eventually, she's able to take a little trip, and during this trip, she's on a ferry. This ferry is hit by another boat, causing a big, crash, and she wakes up in the hospital. In the hospital, they are referring to her as Liz, and then eventually a woman who claims to be her mother comes into the hospital and believes it is her daughter, Liz. So essentially, Amy is being mistaken for this girl, Liz, who looks like her. And Amy kind of sees this as a way out of her abusive relationship with her husband. And then the story goes from there. So as far as the main characters in this, I already kind of mentioned Amy, who is our main protagonist, looking for a way out of her abusive relationship with her husband, Jason. And then we have Liz, who actually Amy does meet prior to being mistaken for her, and they kind of become friends on this little trip. And then we also have Liz's mother, who finds Liz, Amy, in the hospital, and it's kind of a catalyst for what happens from there on. So as far as the writing style, I thought it was really grounded for the most part. There were some characters later on, and a few in the beginning as well, I would say, that are kind of over-the-top caricatures of themselves, of kind of their the type of character they're portraying, which I think I said this in my last book too, but it's not a spoiler with Jason. He's abusive, to Liz, but to everyone else, he literally is perfect. And so it's kind of like, just no one's that perfect. He's just kind of over the top perfect, and then I don't want to say over the top evil, but he was definitely evil. I mean, that stuff happens. So, but overall, it was pretty grounded. It's definitely it starts off really fast paced. The book, it hooks you in pretty much right away, and I would say the pacing definitely slows down and starts to drag a little bit towards the end, and then kind of the ending, I don't want to say it's abrupt, because it's definitely, you feel it building towards the ending, but the ending didn't feel super fleshed out for kind of what had transpired in the story. So as far as things that I really liked about the book, I kind of mentioned it before, but kind of the hook early on was very engaging. I was really wanting to read more, and that kind of leads into another thing that I would say I liked. They were just shorter chapters, and it was just very, you could just keep reading chapter after chapter type of thing. And I think I finished it in a day and a half or something like that, maybe 2 days. But yeah, they're just kind of an engaging hook, really, an interesting story. And then Amy, I really liked Amy. I didn't like everything that Amy did, but as far as how the character was written, she felt like a real person. Like at the beginning of the book when she's being abused and all that, you could feel her fear come through the pages really well. And just throughout the book, there's just things that happen that the author does a really good job of making you feel those things and making it feel like Amy is a real person that those things are happening to. So there are a couple things that I didn't super like. I kind of mentioned some of the characters are just, you know, become over the top character. I don't even know if I'm using that word right, but like character. I'm just gonna skip it. You know what I mean? Like they're over the top of the type of character that they're being portrayed as. And then there are some, plot holes, or I don't want to say plot holes, but just plot elements that clearly require a suspension of, disbelief, being mistaken for somebody else, and, that not being figured out pretty quickly, I think is probably pretty rare. I'm sure it happens, but, I think that requires some suspension there. And then there's some other things later on that I feel are pretty similar in that regard. Um, and then I kind of mentioned this earlier too. Although I think the author did a really good job of like making you feel Amy's, fear and things like that. I think some of the ending just the ending felt out of place for where the book was going. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's like a twist thing, but it felt like the ending was not really fleshed out, and just the way things wrapped up didn't make a lot of sense to me. But others may feel differently on that for sure. Overall, I definitely enjoyed this book. It was definitely is like a quick read, addictive read. Some things I really liked, some things I didn't. I think overall, out of 10, I would give this book a 5.9. The only things that really, like I said, are kind of keeping it down are just some of the over the top characters and kind of the ending a little bit for me.